Hello, folks. Guess what? Today we have the one and only Jim Foster, Canadian legend. Jim, you've been on the scene for a while, and I'm so happy to hook up with you today. As you know, I'm trying to roll with this guitar channel, just anything guitar related, brainstorm talk. And I'd like to learn from you. Where are you at this point? How's it going? I see you had 2 days ago, you had a live. I couldn't attend, unfortunately, but you had a gig.
Yeah, it was great at the Sylvia Hotel. Yep.
And how did that go? Good?
Oh, it's fabulous.
Yeah. So you were doing solo act?
Yeah, that's pretty much all I've done for the last few years. The odd get together with some friends in a jam sort of format, but generally by myself. And there haven't been many gigs at all. So
yeah, I know. Now, during the pandemic, have you tried any online collaboration?
No. I did a short 3-song little concert for a benefit on Savory Island that they had up there, because I used to have a cabin up there, and they asked me if I would contribute. So I did that. Went out and bought some software to enable me to do it. But I'm not real fond of the audio and stuff that comes with most of those things. And it's just gotten so ubiquitous. There's been a few that have really touched me. Colin Linden, at the very beginning of the pandemic, he tore my heart out with stuff that he posted. But, you know, it's more about the live experience for me, or a recorded experience.
Yeah. Because I watched some of the attempts and there's a bit of a lag, and then people get frustrated.
Yeah.
And then it kind of falls apart. And I was trying to experiment, but I couldn't get anyone to borrow their time. There's this thing called solo con tutti. I don't know if you heard of that.
No.
And they claim that even if your internet connection is spotty and whatnot, they have this technology with the built-in metronome that they will keep things in sync.
Yeah, but you know, that it's easy to make a claim.
Yeah, I know. I haven't tested it. I'm wondering who tried.
I'm sure there's lots of stuff out there that purports to do the job, but I mean, theoretically, it's an impossible job. It takes time for it to go back and forth, and only if you're sitting in close proximity to somebody can you react to them in now time.
Exactly. And even, you know, I was talking with Spencer about these things, and he kind of agrees with me. I suck at overdubbing. And, you know, if we're playing live, then I can kind of stay with the time. But I'm noticing if I lay down a backing track and I put my headphones on, and I'm trying to, I don't really nail it. And
timing-wise, you mean?
Timing-wise, yeah. I'm always frustrated. And Spencer thinks it's maybe something to do with headphones, and like, I don't know. I'm not a pro, right? So I don't know how that works. But
well, no. I mean, I think that's a normal thing for a lot of people, because you're outside of the experience, you know. And again, that's part of, if you're playing live with people, you're not just hearing it, you're feeling it. I mean, there are waves in the air from the person sitting 3 feet away from me or 2 feet away from me that are hitting me. You know, that's all there is to it, really. And you can feel it, and you're all tapping your feet together and you're in sync. You know, it just that's a different experience. A lot of people rush when they're in headphones. You know, the excitement, then they rush ahead. It's not just if you're in headphones, it's if you're overdubbing or whatever. So I mean, the logical way to get past that, we used to think, was to just turn it up so effing loud that, you know, you were immersed in the vibe, and that can work. But you know,
but sometimes even visual cues, like if I'm playing with you in a room, I can see you moving, and and then maybe I can nail it. But really, for me, it's really hard to nail it when I'm overdubbing.
And you don't want to be doing it consciously.
No.
Right? If you're in the room with somebody, you're seeing them peripherally or whatever. Your body's just taking it in. If you're concentrating on the headphones and everything, you're not going to get a good performance, because you're in the wrong side of your brain.
Yeah, it just doesn't work for me. And it's so frustrating when you listen back and you're like, what is this? This is like a joke. Like, why am I off, right?
It's universal. Relax.
Yeah, relax. But it's always okay. This has to be a good take, you know.
Well, that's your first mistake right there.
Yeah, that kind of.
It doesn't have to be a good take.
Yeah.
You know.
Actually, yeah. When you read, like, for example, I'm, as you know, I'm obsessed with the Beatles, and you read their studio log. They had like many takes for.
Oh yeah.
Right.
You have to allow yourself the freedom to explore and the freedom to stumble into things that you hadn't thought of. Like I say, you can't operate out of the logical side of your brain. That's not where your strength is. But it thinks that's where your strength is, and it wants to commandeer the performance and tell you how to play. And I have to do this and I have to do that, and this is really important. You have to eradicate that and get into the unconscious part of your brain, where all the information that you've taken in for your whole life resides. And if you let it, it will perform for you.
So you have to get out of the way.
Yeah.
Easy. Not easy.
Well, I'll tell you, for me, that's been what I've gone after since the 80s. I read a book called The Inner Game of Tennis, and it's a brilliant book. The guy's name's Timothy Galway, and I highly recommend it, even though it's that old. He was a tennis instructor, but he had also spent a lot of time in the East and studied Zen Buddhism and whatnot, and got into the principles of that. And so to try and consolidate it into something smaller, his way he looked at it was, the logical brain is an excellent data retrieval system. You can input data, and it's very good at it. And then it sends it over into the other side of the brain. And so if you keep it busy retrieving data, it gets out of the way and the other side of the brain can do the job. And so the simplest way to explain that is, he would have a tennis student who had a problem. And so he had to work through with them. So he'd go, okay, I'm going to hit you some balls. Don't think about anything. Just tell me, is the ball spinning this way or the opposite way as it comes toward you? Focus on that. And then he'd go, okay, now tell me, is the ball hitting your racket straight on or under or over? And as you focus on one, so that was the one he did first, pardon me. So because you want to be hitting it square on. So then he'd get them looking at the spin of the ball, and they'd automatically start hitting it square on because they've already logged in that information. And then you move on to something else. So for me, I applied that to left hand, right hand. Work on what the left hand has to do slowly to do a piece of music. And then not for too long, just work on that. And then come over and work on the right hand. And while you're working on the right hand, the left hand will start to sort itself out without you thinking about it. In fact, better than if you concentrated on it more. And then you go back to it after a while, and now your right hand starts to sort itself out. And you can fine tune you by inputting data of, well, where are my mistakes? What am I doing wrong? Don't try to fix them. Just say, oh, okay, I'm not doing that correct. What is that? Okay, I need to do this. And I'd go back and forth. And that became how I would learn pieces. Then I incorporated, the guitar became one of those parameters, and the voice became another one of those parameters. So I'd be working on my voice, and I'd suddenly notice I was playing better guitar than if I was focused on playing guitar, because I've input all that data. It doesn't work if you don't do the work and input the data. But if you do that, then you focus on something else. So I'll focus on mic technique. How does my voice sound if I'm an inch away, if I'm 2 inches away, if I'm right on it? And while I'm doing that, I'm singing better because I'm not thinking about pitch. I'm not thinking about all. If I start thinking about pitch, I'll probably start being out of pitch. It's just the way the brain works. And so if you think something's important, I got to make this take, it's going to just mess you up, because the importance, it's like you're on your first date and you're just flubbing it all over the place.
Interesting. Wow. I never heard of that, but it makes total sense. I was just watching recently Tommy Emmanuel, where I know you like him.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think about that, but he explained how he's working bar by bar, like get one bar and just nail it. Like don't go all over the place and
yeah. Yeah.
You know, so that's discipline, right? That you constrain yourself to just one bar.
A little section, yeah. Figure out what needs to happen there.
And just totally, like you say, get it into your system. And now it's, you don't have to think, it just happens.
Yeah.
Automatically.
That's kind of the same thing. And speed is the other thing. I read a book once, and they quoted Yo-Yo Ma as saying that when his teacher walked behind him while he was practicing, his teacher said, if I walk behind you while you're practicing and I can recognize the piece you're playing it too fast. In other words, slow it down so slow that I don't even know what you're playing, because when you do that, your musculature can figure out where it has to be. You're not just glossing over stuff. Oh, this has to be, that's more of a stretch than I realized it was, or whatever. Or this note, has to be, he's on the cello. Maybe the strings aren't responding quite right. Am I too light? Am I too heavy? All that stuff. And if you're just racing to get through the piece, you won't find all of those little finesse bits.
Oh, that's amazing. And really, I remember a while ago, maybe 20 years ago, there was this thing that I was able to download called the Amazing Slow Downer or something like that. Some dude was selling. And what it does is you can slow down a track, but it retains the pitch.
Right.
And so, as you know, I was kind of really into John McLaughlin. He's a fast player. So I could never figure out what the hell is he playing? I remember there's this song called La Baleine, where the intro is like just flurry of notes. Right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, it sounds so good, but I don't know what he's playing. Okay, so slow it down, like really. And even then, it's so hard. But if after spending a couple of hours just going like, suddenly I was flying on the guitar. This extreme moronic slowness of playing, like you say, if you really stick to it. And I was so obsessed with that when you sleep on it and tomorrow, you're just like flying on that, right?
Well, that's it, right? Because when you sleep on it, it transfers from the logical brain across into the subconscious brain, which is what we call it.
Yeah.
And it gestates in there and it sorts itself out. And another thing was that if you didn't have that deeper brain to put stuff in, then you wouldn't get the juxtaposition of various ideas and concepts and everything. But once they're all in there, they interact and they start, and that's when you'll have a eureka moment, because it rubs up against something else that you've learned and you go, oh. And until you had both of those pieces, like a jigsaw, you didn't know,
Yeah. And usually, at least in my experience, the biggest eureka and the biggest like revelations are things that have been staring us in the face all the time. For some reason, you just don't see it, right? It's like an elephant in the room, just like notice. And then one day it's like, holy, how come I never noticed it before? That's an interesting kind of a moment, right?
Oh yeah.
You're like, holy, this is, and I remember when I was younger, I thought all these like Jeff Beck and all these guys, they're playing super complicated. Then slowly you learn that actually they're a little bit cheating on the guitar, right? And they attain that effect that it sounds so complicated, but actually they find the most optimal way to jockey.
Yeah, I don't think that's cheating though.
I mean, cheating in my mind, because I thought, oh, he's doing some amazing stretches and whatnot, but actually he found a way around.
He found a way. Yeah.
Found a way. And when you find it, you're like, yeah, this is logical. But before you find it, you just can't figure it out.
Because your logical brain continues to keep you stuck in the pattern that it's convinced is the way to get there. It's like the old video games, I mean, I'm not a video game player, but I remember in the old days, I don't know, Mario or Pac-Man or whatever, and there was always some place that you'd get stuck and you couldn't get to the next level. And it was because you didn't think laterally, I guess, or whatever. And once somebody would show you that, you go, oh, why didn't I think of that? And then bang, now you're off and and it's the same kind of thing.
You get the clue, or you crack the puzzle is. Yeah. And interesting, another thing, I don't know if you heard of, but I at least recently I've been doing a lot of work on that. It's called Ooda Loop or Ooda Loop. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't.
Now, this is coming from the military and fighter pilots. But sadly, a lot of the good things come from the war. So this guy, Colonel, I forgot, Boyd, I think. He was a fighter pilot, and he went through many of these like life and death situations. And then when he retired, he was thinking back, like, how did I survive? What? So he postulates that there is this loop that everybody's going through, which is observe, orient, decide, act. And then your action creates new set of circumstances that you observe again. And this is going constantly on and on. And so he says that the most important part is orientation, which I guess is this kind of lateral thinking that's creative.
Yeah, so it's observe, orient,
decide, act.
Decide. Okay, cool. I like that.
And it can be applied to guitar playing, can be applied to business.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Or, for example, and we can go to extreme cases. One illustration is, let's say you're in a room and an active shooter moves in.
And what?
Active shooter, the American style, high school shootings, those terrible things. Okay, so the guy's moving in and he's shooting, right? Of course, panic, everybody running for their lives, screaming. Now this guy is on his Ooda loop and he's observing, he's deciding to shoot, he's deciding that he shoots and he sees the outcome of that shot and he keeps rolling on that loop. Now, how would you deal with that? Is according to this guy, instead of running and trying to look for cover, you charge at him because this is the last thing he expects. When you charge at him, you reset his loop. He's lost. There is a moment where he's frozen. He's going down, right? So it's counterintuitive because who would mind charge at the active shooter?
But this is try to disorient him.
Yeah, that's your best bet of surviving. Do something completely out of left field.
Right.
And this is where the orientation or the creative side of the brain comes in. That it rearranges. You have your canned or already stored patterns, and you just kind of quickly rearrange them, and you find a new arrangement, right?
Yeah.
And then you act on it. So,
well, for me, what you're saying when I think about the inner tennis concept, it's the same idea. So the observing is I'm observing what I'm playing with this hand. And then the orienting is kind of putting it over into the other part of the brain. And then you're deciding to play it. And then what was the last one?
Act. You act. Actually.
Yeah. And so then you play it.
Yeah.
And the decide is usually very short.
Yeah.
Especially if it's coming from the subconscious, and then you're moving on to the next thing. I like that. That's totally makes sense to me because of the observe part.
Yeah.
And then the orienting is putting it over there and then letting it orient itself and figure out what it is.
Exactly. And of course, this is all empirical, right? This is based on the situation where you see no value in dogma up front. Because if you're flying a plane in combat, there's no metaphysics or dogma that will help you save your ass, right? You need to be observing, right? So the very important thing is to stay alert to your surroundings, which means what are you perceiving, right? And yes, maybe your priest told you, don't you worry, everything's cool. You have done your Hail Mary, but still, you're going to be looking around. You're going to be thinking, okay, what's going on here? And you will not fall for dogma or for some kind of a doctrine that will tell you everything's cool.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, I imagine you're flying the jet almost unconsciously because you've learned how to do that to the point where you don't want to be thinking, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. That just happens now. And so you're just out there observing something else and letting yourself be the best you can be.
And like you say, now you're doing data retrieval and storage.
Yeah.
And then your other side is now playing with it. And of course, it's happening sub-second, right? But he's playing, rearranging and saying, oh, how about we, just reshuffle the deck. What do we have now? What card do you have now in your hands, right? And then you play it. Right? You decide, okay, I'm going to play this card, right? So in music is the same, and especially improvisation. I like improvising, and I often take the wrong turn. But that wrong turn, all of a sudden, gives me this new orientation. And like, okay, this is a wrong note, but opens up this another kind of what's the word, atmosphere that suddenly draws me in. So I deviate, I go over, right? And these are the moments I really enjoy, especially when they happen unintentionally. You can't fake it, right?
Well, yeah.
And
we used to call them lucky mistakes.
lucky mistakes, yeah. That happens to me all the time because I make mistakes. not all are lucky, but yeah, I was last week I was talking to Andy Aledort, who said he's a big fan of Ornette Coleman.
Is that the fellow from Guitar Player Magazine?
Yeah.
I watched most of that. I haven't finished
so
watching
he explained how Ornette Coleman had this approach where he's not at all paying attention to what he's playing. He's listening to the bass player, and the bass player listens to the drummer, and the drummer is listening to him, and it creates this kind of a weird loop where they listen to each other, and there is a fourth something and entity emerges, and that's the music they're playing. So
right.
I've never experienced that myself, but it must be magical.
It is, yeah, because I mean, I've had those kinds of moments with people for sure, where everybody just goes someplace you've never gone before, and it's like, what was that?
Yeah,
that was amazing. Well, how did that happen? And if you're really lucky, you've got the record button pressed.
Yeah,
and then people are really impressed with you,
and then you become the legend.
I meant to do that.
Of course. Then the ego steps in. So,
the ego steps in and butters everything up.
I'm the guru. Come on. So yeah, it's very interesting. And the music to me, people sometimes say, oh, okay, so just music, what's the big deal? But music is fantastic. It's a life-saving device. Mm-hmm. Anybody who's doing it, teaching it, or whatever, this is God's work. This is to be.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that, for sure.
Yeah, and especially people like yourself, you're lucky to have the killer combination where you write songs, you sing them, and you play them. This is like the ultimate, because most of us, I like to play guitar. I suck at writing songs, and my voice is like obscenely bad, right? So that's a very limiting situation. Yeah, but yet you have people who are just.
You've excelled at other things, though. For me, I had a little bit of talent as a kid, and I started working on it very young. I was singing and playing guitar and writing songs from the time I was 13. Wow. So it's not, I run into people, I'm going to start writing, and they're 50 or whatever. Well, that's fine, but it takes a lot of data input and listening to your own mistakes and understanding all of that to get to where your craft elevates. Mm-hmm. It just, you never reach the final plateau. You're constantly just working at it and getting better and understanding more little finesse bits and this and that, but you're still just waiting for inspiration to hit.
Yeah, in
any of those particular things. I can have a day that I just sing like a stuck pig. It just doesn't happen. And or same with you. I'm sure you have days where your hands are just the way they need to be, and other days where it's just like not happening, especially when you get older like us, that you get pain and all that stuff. And it's the same with writing. You can't just go, oh, I'm going to write a great song today and write a great song.
No. I mean, I just watched with big focus the new Get Back Beatles documentary, and you can see how they're struggling. That it's never happening like this. Just slowly, painfully building a song. I don't know if you watch. Right. It really is many layers, many fuck ups, many attempts, and this and that until it kind of.
Yeah, and you have to not do, as you said earlier, go, oh, this is really important, which is really hard if the cameras are rolling. But you have to go, this is going to take as long as it takes. And we've done this before, and we know that. So let's just relax into it and maybe inject some humor in here or there. Because as Lennon says, it'll happen when it happens. So when the deadline comes up, I'll just, bam, it'll be there, And he knows that. But it takes all of that other stuff to get to that point. It's not like nothing's going on during all of that interim time. He's observing. He's observing what everybody's putting out there, all the ideas, and it's all in that crazy Lennon brain.
Yeah. Yeah, and he said actually that for a while there, when the Beatles disbanded and there was these lawsuits and stuff, right, ugly stuff, and then they, somebody else owned their catalog. I think it was Dick James or somebody. They really tricked them legally into a bad position. And Lennon said, for a while I was really upset that somebody else owns my songs. But then he says, I realized songs are just air, like nobody owns it. It's just it magically came to me. I cannot necessarily say that, yeah, this is mine. I was a challenge, just kind of, because he says, we were influenced by whatever the hell is happening around us.
Yep.
And we just pick things and just kind of, reshuffle the deck, and all of a sudden you're holding a hand of cards, and that's your best hand, and you play. That's what happened to them. And it was, I don't know, some kind of magic, right? That everything kind of falls.
Well, yeah, you cannot discount how hard those kids worked when they were young.
Oh, yeah.
For all those early years. Man, they worked harder than anybody, and it paid off. When you listen to them play on Ed Sullivan, they're playing live with no monitors, and they're singing in tune like you can't believe, and their timing is impeccable, and they can't hardly even hear each other, but they've done it so many times, they know. And by know, I don't mean logically, I mean they know, their whole body knows.
Yeah, special talent for sure. Yeah, but that documentary is phenomenal. I used to think I know a lot about the Beatles, but then I learned no, a lot of my preconceived notions were wrong. Once I saw that, how they work, and even but also considering that this was at the very end of this, they already got tired. They were already kind of wasted.
So that's how they worked then, but that's not necessarily how they worked on Revolver or on whatever else.
10 times more intense,
Yeah.
But they already got a bit disenchanted and sort of like, this is the end, right? But they're pros, and one thing about them, you got to give them, they respected their fans, because they said, we will never rehash the song that was successful. So every song they wrote was like unique, like genre or category, and that's a big gift to the fandom, right? It's a gift to us. They could have coasted, so okay, this Day Tripper was successful. Let's create a similar one with some opening riff, but they never repeated that, right?
I don't know if they could have coasted. If you start doing that, you're going to lose people.
Yeah. But some bands like U2, for example, they kept rehashing their same vibe, and
yeah, I suppose, but it was a different time, and
but that was, and also I read, to your point, I read one interview with Frank Zappa, and they asked him, like, okay, so you are this brilliant composer and concept artist and whatnot, but what's up with you're really killing it on the guitar, right? He was really like, take no prisoners. And he says, you know what? I'm not considered a guitar superhero. I have nothing to lose. I just go for it. Like, he had no like, oh my God, there's a pressure. I'm Eddie Van Halen, and I'm supposed to play this perfectly. I just go for it and make mistakes and whatnot, and that's what gives the charm to his.
Well, and the other thing about Frank Zappa was they recorded every solo he played, and then he would take all of those tapes and he would find a solo and put it into a record, rather than go through that thing when you're overdubbing and you're going, oh, this is really important, and you're all nervous. He would just find a great solo that he already played in the right key and put it in.
Also, was editing. Yeah,
cut and paste.
Yeah,
that was one of his things, like a collage artist almost, And of course, you had to deal with key and pitch and timing and everything else. But I guess when you've played that many times and that many solos and that many, whatever. But yeah, that's part of his wizardry to do that. It's like, are you kidding me, man?
I know, he's amazing. So I want to ask you, when it comes to acoustic versus electric, I know mostly I've seen you on acoustic. Are you playing electric at all these days, or mostly?
Yep. When I started playing at 12, I got an acoustic, but of course I really wanted an electric. So after a year, my parents said I could get an electric if I sold the acoustic. So we did that. And then I was an electric player for most of my career. And I had a Martin, which I still have, a Martin D28, but it never got used in the Foster Child stuff or the Jim Foster stuff. And only after I got out of that recording biz thing did I start really getting back into the acoustic guitar. And I mean, they're both different animals. They both respond differently, and I enjoy them both. I like going out to jam sessions with friends and playing electric. That's that's a kind of a joy.
And then when you play electric, what mode, or is it like more rock, blues, or
Well, those jams tend to be, yeah, more of a blues rock kind of thing, maybe a little funky thing here or there, but it's just stuff that's easy enough for people to jam on, you know. So depends who's there. It could be rockabilly, it could be rock and roll, it could be blues, it could, I'm not a big fan of heavy rock at this point in my life, you know. So I kind of abstain from getting involved in that. It just doesn't satisfy me. I don't hate it. I don't hate the people who play it or anything. It just doesn't, you know. But there's some players up here, and I like to just sort of follow along, like you're saying about Ornette Coleman. What are they doing? Okay, I'm going to go to that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't need to be leading people through stuff. And I do a lot of many years ago when I was working, I discovered that a lot of our records were too complicated to bring a song to a jam. And that bothered me. And I talked to Bill Henderson about it, and he said, yeah, he had gone through the same thing. So we talked about the difficulty of writing something simple enough, yet not having it be boring. It's a real challenge. And so I've gone after that to a certain degree. So now I'm to the point where I've got enough of those that I can go to a jam and pull out a song that nobody's heard and guide them through it, and we can jam it, and it turns into something that I hadn't anticipated it turning into, because I have to go to where they're going, because I know it better than they do. So it's easier for me to move to someplace else. They're kind of like, okay, here's where we are. I have to go there and then guide it to wherever it needs to go. And that's fun too, you know?
Yeah. And yet at the same time, they are not constrained with what you know, right? So they can kind of meander off.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's been one of the remarks that I got from them. One of them was like, you're not like other band leaders. You know, we were having a rehearsal and, well, what do you want me to play? I said, just play what you play and we'll see how it goes. And you know, I'll let you know when I think you've done something spectacular, and vice versa, you know. Let's just see what happens.
So you're like Miles Davis.
Oh well, yeah, sure. Me and Miles, we're just like that. But yeah, you learn from these guys, right? The whole concept of Miles is the way those records, the way Kind of Blue was put together, and those records were put together in the editing room more than anything, you know, where they would just go and play and then take the better parts.
Yeah, because I read Miles said, not Miles, but I read Dave Liebman, who was in his band for a while. He claims that Miles never told him anything, just like hit the stage, play.
Yeah.
He's like, what? And then after each performance, maybe they will get together and listen to the tape. Also, Miles was silent. He was a strong, silent type. But he wasn't saying anything. Just like. Okay.
But you could find yourself fired if he wasn't enjoying what you were playing.
Oh yeah, definitely.
He don't want to talk to you about it, but you're either there or you're gone.
I know. But yeah, he was a very.
I ain't got time to tell you what to play. If I don't like it, you're out of here.
Yeah, get out of here. Yeah, he was. And even I was watching this. Like he would not mince words. I was watching this interview with John McLaughlin, and he openly admitted there's this a double album, Live Evil, that they did in, I guess, 71. Miles Davis, and I think he did 5 nights, and then on the last night, John McLaughlin just joined on stage, and most of these cuts are on the album,
right?
But John said, okay, I'm here, like I don't know the band, I'm just kind of, somebody gives me guitar and playing. And then afterwards, Miles comes to me and said, John, what's the matter? You didn't get your shit together tonight.
I remember reading that. Yeah.
Like, yeah. What's going on? And indeed, I would say it's not really gelling, you know.
He wasn't in his comfort zone.
No, he was kind of all over the place. And meanwhile, we had all these like Jack DeJohnette and Gary Bartz and all these people just doing it. And Keith Jarrett, right?
But they had played like 4 or 5 nights already.
Yeah, they already warmed up.
So they were all just like that. And then John's got to come in and try to find a place in that.
And he couldn't get his shit together. Yeah, that's what you're saying. Every night, you never know. You have good nights, you have bad nights.
Yeah.
Sometimes you really, you feel like, oh, I should probably get a day job or something.
But sometimes when you don't think you're doing well is when people will come up and go, "Oh, man, you were so on tonight."
Yeah.
So you don't ever really know. You can think you're killing it, and people go, "Yeah, it wasn't really that great."
Oh man. And also, as I notice, that happens to me when I'm recording. Like I may be recording and I'm playing and oh, this is good. I'm really hitting it. And then when I listen back, it's like, it's awful. And sometimes when I'm recording, I'm like, okay, I fucked up, and I'm just gonna continue playing anyway, just to fill the space. And I listen back and like, wow, this is good. So as I'm playing, I cannot really judge what's going on necessarily.
Yeah, well, you don't want to.
Yeah,
It's the wrong time to be judging.
my reflection.
Just play. Just play.
Just play, and
if you don't like it, erase it.
Because I may say, okay, so now I'm going to play this solo, and I'm going to go for fast lines, right? And I start, and I just can't, and I end up super slow, and it's good, right? So you can't prejudge, right? That's another interesting thing.
No, you have to remember, man, that Steely Dan would bring in like 12 different guitar players to play a solo in the same song, and erase them all until finally somebody played something they liked. And these are the best guitar players in the world.
And these songs, on the record, these solos are amazing.
Yeah, and that's why.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're expecting yourself to get it in one take or two takes. These guys are all doing all these takes, and then they just get rid of him and bring in another guy. They bring in Larry Carlton. Well, let's do, and then they bring in any number, Robin Ford, or they bring in, it's just silliness. But that's how they raised the bar to the level that they did.
Yeah. And that solo on Do It Again, just mind blowing. I think it's some kind of electric sitar or something. Forgot who played it, but like.
Well, that electric sitar was floating around for a while there.
Yeah, he was.
What was the name of that? I can't think of the name of it. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, but he really killed it. It was like, okay, I don't know how is he doing it.
Was it Skunk Baxter? Maybe that's early Steely Dan.
Early.
I think it was Skunk.
The phrasing, the timing, the pace, it's just like some of the best ever on the record. Guitars. So it's a tall order. If you try and figure it out, good luck. Yeah. So when people are teaching guitar, I see a lot of these things that, like, didactic, like people talk about cage system and combining mixed major minor scales and what, but doesn't seem to solve the problem, because people keep asking the same questions over and over again. And what do you think about that? Is there a better way, rather than giving you, here's a system and just follow the system and you're going to sound good if you're teaching someone?
Yeah, but there's not any one system that's going to suit everybody.
Yeah. Obviously.
And the thing to remember is all those guys who are teaching guitar, they're just trying to make money.
Yeah, exactly.
The easiest way they can, they need to make money. So, hey, step right up. Everyone's a winner. I'll teach you how to play guitar. In 2 days, you'll have chicks hanging off your shoulders. Come on, life of the party.
Yeah, exactly. And then some guys are saying, okay, here's a scale that's going to solve all your problems. And then the other guy says, the worst thing you should do is learn scales. Don't learn scales.
Yeah, well, Django Reinhardt, look what he did with just 2 fingers, Yeah. And like Spencer, you talk about Spencer. Spencer Schoening, for people who are just watching this. He's brilliant. He knows way more stuff than me, But that doesn't mean he can play everything I play naturally, just without thinking about it. We each have to learn from each other, which has been kind of a fun process. And Aubrey's got a great brain too, and he's like plays completely differently. It's like you just have to find your own music, basically. And the hunger to find your own music will hopefully lead you to find whatever scales you need to satisfy you. For me, I basically learned the major and minor and how they applied to each other on the neck, and then the blues scale. And from there, just let my ear take it, because if I've got those together and I hear a note I want to play, I don't worry about what scale it's in. That it's all just about hand position and where your hand is. And so, once I'd learned where the chords were on the neck, then I know where the scales, those scales, lay over those chords. So, you can just kind of go and use your ear and play out of your subconscious mind. But when you realize that you're going to crash and burn because you're losing the zone, then you can look down and go, oh, that's where I am. That's where the scale is over that chord. And then you can land gracefully. It might not be spectacular, but you can land gracefully and not crash and burn. Yeah. And once I got that going, it made a big difference.
Oh yeah.
Because you get confident that you're not going to embarrass yourself. And then you'd let yourself go more.
Yeah, in my case, it was the opposite. I did not really at all look into intellectualizing or, analyzing, but I was just playing by ear. And then later on, I learned about this concept of mixing minor and major pentatonic. And I realized I was doing it all along, just by ear.
Yeah.
I was always mixing those two scales, but I had no idea they're called that way. Of course you were. Because it sounds good to me,
Yeah, yeah.
If I'm playing in A, blues in A, I'll be alternating between C and C sharp, right? Or F sharp and G, depending on.
Yeah.
And it sounds good to me. I had no idea I'm mixing minor and major scales, which is weird, bizarre, because I never tried to learn that, right? But definitely when you're playing, you hear these things and I like the sound of this. I don't know.
Or you might want to go into a little bit of or something, and you find it on your neck, and there you go. For me, part of the joy was, I went through a period of learning, trying to learn. I remember I wanted to be able to play like Richie Blackmore when Deep Purple was all the rage. Deep Purple in rock. So we're talking like 69, 70, somewhere in there. And I would sit down and just go after it, and I could do a semblance. And then one day I realized I was like, there already is a Richie Blackmore.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he has to work this hard at being Richie Blackmore, but it's not really what I want to do. And then at the same time, you'd hear Neil Young going, and you kind of go, okay. Or BB King, can express so much with so little. And I stopped wanting to be flurry of notes guy. One of the best guitar solos I ever heard was Don Felder in Eagles One of These Nights. It's just, you can sing it. It's just like so melodic, and the tone is so fabulous, and it was so original. Never had heard anything like that at that time. That's the other thing about that period in time with the Beatles and everybody else. You weren't trying to be like everybody else. You were trying to do something original that still fit into the modern lexicon. And there was still a lot of cave to be prospected, and chip away and find some gold. And everybody was about finding their own sound. Nowadays, everybody's trying to sound the same as the other guy so that they can be regarded as commercial or whatever, But when the Eagles got Felder and he brought in his ability as a guitar player into that band, wow. That was my take at that age, because he was way beyond all of us. And I, having read his book many, many, many years later about how he was a guitar teacher and taught Tom Petty and all of that stuff. And there's a funny story about that probably 10 years ago now or something, I guess. Tom Petty played Wembley in England, and Eagles were in there, I don't know, a month later or something. And one of the security guards said to Felder, he said, yeah, Tom Petty was in here last month. And Felder says, oh yeah, I know Tom. He says, yeah, Tom said, thanks for the guitar lessons.
Yeah.
Have I lost you?
No. Okay. Do you see?
Okay. It kind of was going a bit.
Probably my internet. Every now and then there's a hiccup.
Right.
Yeah. And then because I'm an old guy, I'm stuck in this period in the 70s, when it comes to guitar playing, right? And then there was this kind of shredding period,
Yep.
when shredders, which is where I kind of stopped losing interest. I mean, I admire to no end Steve Vai. To me, Steve Vai is like, wow.
And
but I will never.
Yngwie Malmsteen and all those guys.
Joe Satriani. These
Yeah.
guys are just athletic, right? But somehow I would never buy their records or sit down and listen. I don't know why. It's just my kind of limitation. That's where guitar lost charm for me, when they started sounding like typewriters.
Well, it starts becoming an athletic event,
Mhm.
more than a spiritual event. For me, I was the same with Al Di Meola and a few guys, and I was like, intellectually, okay, I get it that this is brilliant and you're really doing some intelligent stuff here, but it's not hitting my heart at all.
It's not visceral. It's mostly intellectual.
Yeah.
It leaves me cold. And like you say, even a really raw gut bucket blues guy who knows 2.5 chords maximum but it just does something to you when you listen to it.
Yep. That said, I remember watching at one of the Eric Clapton Crossroads concerts, and he had Steve Vai's band up, and they were all playing. They stood side by side. They were all playing, one hand on their guitar and one hand on the other guy's guitar, and they're doing like Flight of the Bumblebee or some bloody thing, and then they'd switch over. And I mean, I had to stand up in my living room and clap. I just was like, this is unbelievable,
But it's circus.
Yeah, it is. That's the best word for it.
It's Cirque du Soleil, phenomenal.
Yeah.
But is it really, the music that saves lives?
Yep.
Because, I can tell you some of my friends would not be here with us today if it wasn't for music.
Oh yeah, no, I've had people tell me the difference my songs made in their life.
Yeah. Isn't
complete
that
strangers?
Yeah. And that's religion. That's religious experience.
It's a pretty cool feeling. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It'll keep you going when the money's not there.
Who cares about the money? Come on.
Well, my landlord used to.
Just kidding. Just kidding. I know. Hey, so I want to show, you see this. I have this record of yours. I think it's from the 80s, right?
86.
Okay, we love it. Everything, like songs, the production. It's almost like predating the 90s. Am I wrong? It's really.
I don't know. Well, it did predate the 90s. It was 86.
I know, but it's kind of so powerful. And how long did it take you to cut this?
Oh, it took a long time.
A long time. It's good material.
Because I didn't have a record deal, so I had to write some songs and then get some interest, and then start recording, and then get some more interest, and go back into the studio again. And it took a couple of years, not solid in the studio, but in and out and back and forth and writing and trying to flesh out what the record wanted to be. I had the song that got the most interest first off was the title track, Dancing on the Power Lines, which is a raging rocker, right? And quite political too, and everything, and so then I had to write some other stuff that sounded like the same artist, basically, and go through that. So that it all took time, and I had to figure it out as I went. It's funny that that's so long ago now, 35 years ago. And just last week, I got an email from a guy in Brazil wanting to know the lyrics for all the songs on that record. And because he had found some of them online, but they didn't seem to be correct. So he's been sending them to me, and I correct them. I replace which words, and he's like, excuse my English or whatever. And then he goes back to the website that he got them from and corrects them on the website.
Wow.
35 years later, right? And he's loving the record. And he's some guy in Brazil who I assume got it. A German company bought the rights to it about 10 years ago and re-released it on CD, which it had never been on a CD, because 86 was just as CDs were starting to happen.
Yeah.
So.
But great energy. It's a good.
Yeah, it's a high energy record for sure.
I love that. That sounds really good. You know, I have a big system. I just
Yeah.
love it. Wow.
Yeah.
It rocks the house. It really.
Excellent.
Yeah, excellent stuff. So I just want to ask you, you know, when I was a kid growing up, there was a lot of protest music. I remember that. Why aren't we hearing more protest music now? Now is the time, isn't it? Like
Everybody's too busy taking selfies.
oh, that's so. When was the better time to protest than today? I can't.
Well, I'm sure there's a few people out there, but yeah, it's just not the.
Remember Dylan and everybody, Beatles were doing White Album. It was all this like really protesting and saying, "Come on,
Yep.
come on, dudes, give us a
No,
break."
it's there's a fella named Bob Lefsetz. Do you read Bob Lefsetz?
It doesn't ring a bell.
I'll send you a link.
Thank you.
He writes a blog, and it's been going for years, and it is largely about the music business. Although sometimes he'll write about novels he's reading or the latest Netflix show or politics, and he takes a severe backlash. He's got thousands of people who read his blog who are in the music industry, and they are just as far apart as society is. Just because they're artists doesn't mean there's not right wing and left wing. And if he gets political, man, the backlash is unbelievable. And he's always going, where are the protest songs? Why aren't the artists saying anything?
Yeah.
It's part of what he does, you know, and it's enjoyable. You can't subscribe to everything that he says or whatever, but he gets your brain going. And that's one of his things that he bemoans. It's like the artists used to stand up and take a risk, but nobody wants to take a risk anymore because their careers are so fragile and you know.
And we're not supporting them.
Yeah, well, but music doesn't mean what it used to mean.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. Music now, to the younger generation, and this always, I have to laugh because, like your son Phil and Spencer and Aubrey, those guys, I think of them as kids, but no, I said to them, "What do the kids think?" And Spencer says, "I don't know what the kids think," because those guys are in their 30s now, you know. And I recognize, because I felt old in my 30s. I felt like, okay, I have to change my game here. And the kids, like I say, it's a different world, and they never experienced the world that we were in. And music for them, not only is it free, but it's everywhere as background, and that's all it is.
Commodity.
It's just, yeah, but it's just background. It's like wallpaper, it's fabric, you know. And if they don't like it, "Oh, I don't like this place," you know. It's like walking into a room that you don't like the color of. I don't want to be in here. So, but beyond that, very few of them have an investment in music as music, unless it's their friend's band, or, you know. And still, in some cases, I believe that if their friend's band has a political thing, that still gets across. It doesn't get across on the big stage so much, but I think in some of the clubs, the punk ethic is still alive, you know.
Yeah, but I bemoan the absence of mainstream because of the technology. When I was growing up, we had one TV channel, you know, like newspaper every morning. Everybody's reading the same news. Everybody's watching the same channel, and it was easy because attention was abundant. Now attention is scarce. Like, how do you grab someone's attention? Right?
Well, and everything's corporate now.
Yeah.
Corporations have taken over the world.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Including the music business. What are those bedings that we get?
I apologize. There's somebody pinging me. I killed it.
Oh, okay.
I apologize. Sorry, I was stupid not to kill it before.
It's fine.
Yeah, so you're right. I mean, everything is a business model or business plan.
And so the artists can't say anything, or they're going to lose their deal, if they even have a deal in the first place, which most of them don't.
Yeah,
you know.
Remember when?
But the hip hop stuff, right? I mean, we say, why isn't there any protest? But the hip hop stuff is kind of protest music. Yes. It's not your and my culture, particularly, but for those kids that are doing that, it's definitely their culture, you know. And yeah, some of it's all about yo-yo and my bling and my car and my ho and all of that. But the original stuff that came up with that had a lot to say about society. And I think some of it must still be out there. Maybe not. Maybe it's all just as shallow as everything else, and it's all about Kim Kardashian's ass implants. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember you bring a good point that I wanted to discuss briefly with you. There was this a few years back, there was this kind of underground event happening in Vancouver. Maybe you were part of it sometime, but I attended maybe 3 or 4, called Sound Walks. Have you heard of Sound Walks?
No.
And this is like a planetary phenomenon that's happening in big cities all around the world. Basically, what's happening is we get together, let's say a group of 10 people, dozen people. There is the lead. And then the lead walks us through some urban area. Like usually we would congregate at the C-bus station, and then with this proviso, keep silent, don't pay attention to visuals, just listen and experience your city just through ears.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, they would hire some avant-garde musicians who would walk with us, and then the leader will stop them every now and then and says, okay, play. And they improvise based on, like next to a little waterfall or next to a,
right. Yeah.
To riff off the sounds. It was amazing. And I have some recordings, and I love them, right? But why I'm saying this is afterwards we would go sit down for a beer and chat, just camaraderie. And there was this really kind of really old dude, avant-garde trumpet player.
Older than us?
Is that possible? I don't know. Looked older. Let's just say looked older.
Yeah.
And I was chatting with him, and I was like, okay, so I'm all into this, avant-garde jazz and whatever, but I could never really connect with hip hop, which is I'm ashamed, but I just can't, right? And he's like, dude, are you crazy? Like, this is the best shit ever. He says he's totally into hip hop, and I'm like, my God, why am I so limited? Why am I so constricted? I mean, when this old dude was like loving it, he's the best shit ever, and he's talking about these rhythms and drumming, and so I don't know if you ever connected, if you're managed to experience that.
Not specifically. No, I'd have to say no. The politics of it turned me off, and
but sound-wise, music-wise, musically,
well, the groove of it, sure, I like the groove of it. It doesn't speak to me a lot, and that's all I know. I mean, but I'm not really exposed to that much of it. I'm a white guy living up the coast in Canada,
Yeah.
So it's not just coming across my radar regularly.
I know it's a big mystery for me. Why? And my kids.
But you know what, Alex? Why do you like strawberries and not raspberries? Or why do some people like chocolate and other people don't? It's just, is it genetic, or is it nature versus nurture? Who knows?
Who knows?
Stuff just is.
And nothing is definitive, because when I was young, I could not stand eggplant. But now it's my favorite, one of my favorite.
Right. Yeah.
Things change. People change.
Yeah.
A taste change, evolve or devolve, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So you never know. And I'm waiting for that day when I hear hip hop and like, oh, this is so deep.
Well, it's such a broad category too, right? It's ridiculously broad category. So you'd be well served to have found out what specific hip hop that guy was listening to that turned him on as a trumpet player,
Yeah. I'm big. These days, I'm listening a lot to Roy Ayers from the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And these dudes, like, Sly and Family Stone, James Brown, Roy Ayers, I think they were maybe the first inspiration for hip hoppers too.
That's possible.
Because they have these like monotony. The same as Miles Davis was also exploring monotony in his 70s electric period. Just hit the groove and just keep going forever.
Yeah.
It's very monotonous, but somehow hypnotizing and creates even ecstasy, right? And I like that. And that's why I'm surprised I'm not hooked more into hip hop, because I like.
Well, Coltrane did that too. He got into that in a very almost religious way.
Dervish, yeah.
The drone and the meditation of it, and let's just keep this modality thing going, which he partly got from Miles too.
Yeah.
They started getting into modal stuff and not having as many chord changes for sure.
Yeah. Miles said that when the way he envisioned Kind of Blue was he attended some concert where there were people from Africa playing the thumb piano,
Yeah.
And he says he wanted actually to create an album to capture that sound. And
Yeah.
Kind of Blue was like this thumb piano.
Right. I could see that.
Yeah. Interesting, right? So he's always experimenting. Right now, I'm really also almost like obsessed with Sonny Rollins. I'm going back to Sonny Rollins in the 50s, the hard bop. It is celebration of life. It is incredible.
So do you try learning any of his solos on guitar?
Yeah. What I like about him is short phrasing.
Right.
He never goes into like sheets of sound like Coltrane.
Right. Yeah.
And that's almost like, I don't know what it is, storytelling or something. He's just like short sentences. Some dude who's just unassuming and just talking, but it has such an effect on me, impact, right?
Mm.
And he's so authoritative. I mean, when you think about he was 26 when he recorded the Saxophone Colossus. It's like Mr. Saxophone. You listen to him, it's like, how can such a young guy be so authoritative?
Well, partly it's like what you were saying about John Lennon, how they just listened to what was going on around them and then, you know, package it differently. And at that period, all those guys, I mean, the jazz thing was just like a cauldron that was just bubbling, and all those guys were part of it. And they'd watch each other nightly and go out to the clubs and see what this guy was doing and incorporate that. Just amazingly kinetic, you know, thing going on.
Yeah. And I was reading Miles's autobiography. These things are incredible, you know, when you hear, when you learn how these people think, how open-minded they were, and how they were, because you know Miles was a very sensitive guy and suffered a lot. Then even when he was young, he goes to Paris and they treat him like a king.
Yeah.
And then he realizes that, you know, back in the States, they just treat him like a piece of shit.
Yeah, they treat him like crap.
Still, he goes back. Why? He needs that energy.
Yeah.
To sacrifice his good well-being. You know, he was in love with.
Because it was a scene.
The scene. He's like, I couldn't do it in Paris. People love me and I everything's gorgeous, but I cannot, you know, he needs that strife. Yeah. So this is the sacrifice for the art, right? He knew he was beaten, like, you know, by cops and really treated.
Oh yeah, I know the whole story. Yeah.
And also he's right by saying that white people misappropriated, like anything blacks were doing, they just misappropriate the repackage and like, okay, present as if it's kind of theirs. And that hurt him a lot, right? But still, he says, I'm not a racist because he employed all these like talented white guys. He's not at all myopic. If you're a good musician, he doesn't give a shit about race or anything, right? And he says he was getting flack from dudes like, hey, why did you hire a white guitar player? He says, find me a motherfucker who can play like him. I'm sure.
That motherfucker can play.
That's right. Yeah. So basically, to try and wrap it up, it's not easy making a living playing guitar and singing in today's.
It's not easy living, period.
And then on top of that, you try and make.
For most of us, I don't know about, but for most of the people I know, it's not easy living.
No.
You know,
I think we can manage. I think we as humans can deal with everything, but I don't think we can manage this climate shit. That's where I lose my hope. We can deal with everything else, but this climate change seems like we can't.
It's a big problem.
Yeah. Everything else I can imagine. Yeah, we can deal with pandemic. We can deal with any economic downturn, blah, blah, blah. We are resourceful. But how can you deal when your house is on fire? Like,
yeah.
That saddens me, really.
Well, yeah.
Let's hope I'm wrong.
Okay, I'm with you.
Yeah, Jim, I know there's nothing we can do other than, because they say, it's not a technological problem. It's not economic problem. It's a lack of political will.
It's a corporate problem and a political problem. Yeah. Until the governments and corporations decide to do something about it, nothing's going to happen.
And they will not. So we need to go in millions out and demand. If we don't do that now,
Yeah.
they're indolent, they're inert, they don't give a shit.
Yep.
So on that optimistic note,
We didn't talk much about guitars.
yeah, let's talk about guitars. So I know you're a big Larry Bay fan. Sorry,
Well, I got a Gretsch behind me here on the wall.
oh my God, is that something new or?
No.
Beautiful, look at that. Now, I never played Gretsch, to be honest. I did try a little bit, but I always felt they're a little bit stiff, like, you know, the more like a country.
They're their own beast for sure. Yeah, definitely their own beast, but they have a place. And my go-to is my Stratocaster. I've got an old Stratocaster that I play regularly. That's just beat up and, you know, falling apart, but it sounds like God. It just, you know, and I've got a couple of old Martins and, you know, my Larave's that are my workhorses.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah.
And also maybe you can tell us about I know you were telling me about your acrylic nails and the technique it's giving
Oh,
you.
well, I just get the one nail done. I go in and because when I was playing with a flat pick, it would always smack against the strings and the nail would be down to the flesh and then it would bleed and stuff. So I had them put a plastic nail on top of it and then put the acrylic on top of that to protect it more than anything. And then as it grew out, I didn't need to have the plastic under there anymore. They could just put the acrylic over the nail. And then I realized I was finger picking more and more because the nail was now in good shape. And then I realized that I could get away with holding my fingers like this. Where's the camera? Over here. I could hold my fingers like that as if I was holding a pick. And this nail here is long enough that it will actually function as a pick. So I can do a semblance of flat picking and finger picking simultaneously, right? Boom, 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 blah, blah, blah. And it just changed everything for me. And the only problem is now with the nails that long, when I do want to play with a flat pick, the nails kind of get in the way of the flex, you know, with the pick. So I've lost the speediness of a pick. You can't really, this isn't flexible, it doesn't give you that. But, you know, I can do so much other stuff, and the sound of the fingernails and flesh on the strings is just much more pleasing to me than the sound of a pick.
Yeah, especially when I remember you doing the classic gas, for example, you know, and it really gives you that power to deliver.
Yeah.
Like,
and if you do that with your nails, some guys do it with all their nails. I just do it with the one because it's the only one that gets all that beat up, and it's like $7, you know, and it lasts for 3 weeks. So that's a pretty good deal.
Of course.
You just go to your nail place and they look at you weird, you know, until you explain what you want. And then after you've been going there for a while, they just, oh, Jim, how are you? You know, they're mostly Vietnamese. I don't know why, but Vietnamese seem to have cornered the nail market. So it's kind of like going to your local Vietnamese restaurant. You go in and they get to know you and they know what you want.
Yeah.
You know,
they're very personable after a while, right?
Yeah.
That's a nice thing about that culture, right? And also wanted to ask you quickly, any preference to the string gauge? Like, are you?
I tend to use 10s on my electrics, but that's because I use 12s on my acoustics. And when I went back to use anything lighter, it was just ridiculous. I couldn't play in tune because my hands are manhandling the string so much. On the acoustics, the electric was just too flimsy and everything would be nuts. So 10s, I think I might even be using 11s on the Gretches because they have a different tension to them, you know. But on the Strat, it's 10s.
There's been lately some controversy around, and again, like you say, people, I don't know, maybe trying to sell something, where there are people who claim that the thinner strings actually give you better sound, which is kind of the opposite to what you would think.
Well, you know, and there's Billy Gibbons saying that, was it BB or somebody that told him, why are you working so hard? And I think he uses 7s now or something, you know, but then you have to learn how to play so light, or you're going to just strumming the strings is going to put it out of tune, you know. But yeah, then you can play really light and get get that thing. But I'm more of a subscriber of the Stevie Ray Vaughan, where he used 13s and tuned his guitar down a half step so that the tension was the same by being tuned down, but he had the thicker string to get the magnetic pull on the magnets.
Yeah. And he was really flooring it when he
Oh yeah.
he was feeling it. When he hit that string, it was like,
Yeah.
Now, what do you think
So-
about what Andy said in his when he was talking? He was present in a room where Stevie and
I saw that part. Yeah.
sound exactly like, how's that like? That sounds like science fiction, right? That you could.
Well, I understand what he means by it. It's not that it actually sounded like an amp, but you could hear the translation to the amp through what they were doing on their fingers, because they had played through the amp enough that knowing how the amp was going to respond to what they were doing with their fingers changed the way they played with their fingers. And so you could hear that in the sound just of the guitar. It was already playing what the amp really wanted to hear in order to give you that sound, you know, the tubes.
Yeah.
You're hitting the front end of the tubes with a certain sound.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Only him and Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah.
Eddie's
But yeah, I totally get that. I played without an amp a lot on my Stratocaster, and just so you know, I always have. It's just a thing, you know. And when you plug in, if you find the right setting, otherwise you got to change the way you're playing, you know, to suit what's coming out of the amplifier.
Yeah, I often practice just unplugged, you know. and what's surprising to me is like I would be practicing and I, you know, I kind of think certain things could be improved, but I'm thinking, but when I plug in, it's all gonna go away. But no, it stays. It even gets more pronounced. The mistakes or the, you know.
Oh yeah.
The amp is not gonna cover your sin.
No.
No.
It's going to amplify them.
Amplify, and stomp box is not gonna help her. You have to get your act together.
Yeah. My favorite stomp box these days is it's called a micro amp. It's an MXR, and it's one knob, and all it does is up the voltage, so that like a Les Paul or a guitar with humbuckers is a little hotter going into the amp than a Stratocaster is with the single coils. And so you can just adjust this so that it's a little hotter, so it hits the front of the amp a little harder. And man, what a difference it makes.
How is it called?
Micro amp.
Maybe I should get it.
Yeah, and it doesn't, there's no tone, there's no anything. It just changes the voltage. And I think there's a couple of other places that do it, but you can step on it for a solo, and rather than giving you a distorted solo, it gives you essentially the same sound that you have, only a bit louder. That's why I got it. And then I discovered that not only was it giving me more volume, but the way it was hitting the tubes was making the tubes go, I surrender. And just, wow. It was like sweet spot all over the place. So now I've started, basically it just is on quite often when I'm playing, unless I want to play a quiet section. And I don't have it, it's not turned up very loud. It's just that little teeny bit of extra voltage can make all the difference, I find.
So you're using it only on Strat or even on the...
Yeah.
Do you have to use it?
I haven't played anything through an amp but my Strat for quite a few years. I did a song called What? I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah.
So I wrote that on the Strat up in my bedroom. The Strat just lives by my bed. And then, but I recorded it on the Gretsch. And through, how did I do that? Oh, I've got a little tiny amp. What you call them? Oh shit, my brain's gone now. I'm thinking about all the other stuff we talked about. But anyway, I did line in and out to do that. Can't think of it right now.
Yeah, but that was a ballsy sound, I remember.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, good.
Came up pretty good.
Yeah, because sometimes I play my Les Paul, and I've noticed, and it really depends on how relaxed I am, and like you say, how much am I out of the way. But every now and then I hit, as I'm playing, it starts sounding reedy, like saxophone. There's this reedy quality to it, which I can never command, but it happens.
Nice.
And it's like, what, how, I don't know how, but all of a sudden, anything I play has this reedy quality.
Is
And
that through an amp?
Through an amp, yeah. Through an
Yeah,
amp.
it's probably your tubes.
All of a sudden has this reedy, I love that, but I can never command it. Like it
It's
just
probably
happens.
your tubes.
Mm-hmm.
And when they warm up to a certain point, they're giving you that sound.
That's so beautiful. That's,
well, you know, Eddie Van Halen used to change his tubes like every day.
Oh, I didn't know.
Because he had his amp set. There's a thing called bias in your amplifier, and you try to set that so the tubes run efficiently. Mm-hmm. If you set the bias too hot, the tubes will be glowing red, and they'll burn out in hours. And that's what he used to do. And that's how he got what he called his brown sound. And it's a very pleasing sound, but you know, it's very expensive.
Yeah, maybe but this
so,
is
like with my Vox, I've got a Vox AC15, and when I play that, the sound I get in the first set's not at all like the sound I get in the second set. As the tubes warm up, they start to change, and you get a different sound.
Yeah, that's
true. So it could be that. You should, next time it happens to you, try to remember how long you've been playing.
Yeah, because all of a sudden it starts, and
yeah,
and it's the closest I've heard electric guitar to a tenor sax. Or
which has got to be a nice sound. Yeah,
it's heavenly.
Yeah,
I can never, like, maybe I should first leave the amp on for an hour, and I don't know.
Well, it wouldn't hurt, but it's still not going to be the same as if it's got a signal going through it.
I think I'm pushing it. Yeah. By the way, do you know the joke when about the guitar player talking to his buddies and say, you know what, I'm worried. I think my wife's cheating on me. And he's like, oh man, that's so bad. And he's like, hey, I think she's going to his concerts and hooking up with this dude. And since tonight you are borrowing my amp, can I ask you for a favor? Can I hide behind my amp on the stage and I'll spy on my wife, see what's going on, right? And then sure. So he does that, and then the next day they get together, like, so how did it go? He says, oh man, I was behind the amp, I was kind of crouching, and I see my wife walk in, and then she's at the bar, and then she's flirting with this dude, and they start touching each other and hugging, and my heart just sank. And then I looked and I see this kind of, one of my tubes is going more reddish than the other. Is there, can I fix it on my own, or is there a way to have That's basically it.
Okay, well, that's a good place to end this, I think, right?
It is. Yeah, thank you so much, Jim. And I hope we can do it again, because you are just an encyclopedia of music.
Oh, yeah, bullshit.
We love you, and people are going to enjoy this. So thank you so much.
Okay.
Have
Say
fun.
hi to everybody for Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Okay. Bye-bye.
And we'll see you very soon. Let me just stop the recording. Where is that?